Every payroll role tells a story, not just about skills, but about how organisations really value the people behind pay. From standout candidates to overlooked talent, today we're going behind the hiring decisions that shape the profession through the eyes of the CIPP's corporate partner, Portfolio Payroll. This is Behind the Button. Hello and welcome to Behind the Button, the podcast that really lifts the lid on what goes on behind the scenes in the world of pay. I'm Laura Murphy, the CIPP's content editor. Now on this show we would like to cover all different areas of pay, and one subject we haven't covered yet is the payroll jobs market. So what's currently happening, what employers are looking for, and what professionals can do to stay ahead of the curve. I'm delighted that today we've got a payroll recruitment expert with us to unpack all of that. Welcome to the show, Gillian Owen.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me today.
No, honestly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for travelling all the way from Manchester to be in London with me to talk all things payroll recruitment.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty seamless journey,
Good
to be fair, so all good.
Good. So on this show, we have a tradition of asking our guests to put a question for a future guest on the show. And yours is actually nothing to do with payroll, but it is a really, really nice question. So what brings you joy? And that doesn't need to be on a professional level. This can be in a personal capacity as well.
I suppose I'm a mum of a 9-year-old girl, so I would have to say that it is her that brings me joy. I actually was probably a bit later on having my little one, sort of late 30s actually. So it's probably one of those where, just watching her grow up and develop and actually... Do you know, it was actually really interesting. The other week, one of her friends from school turned around to her and said she had some life advice for her. And I said, go on then, what is it, Florence? And she said, to marry a rich man and to never have a job. I was like, mix it between a little bit annoyed, but also, you know, maybe that ship has sailed for me now. But I actually, what her response was probably what brought me the most joy. She actually said, no, I told the girl, my mummy goes to work and she loves it and she meets really great people and she does really great things. She said, so no, when I grow up, I want to have a job and work. And I thought, I'm bringing it up right. I'm doing the right thing and she's seeing all the right things. And, you know, I am lucky that I do very much enjoy my job. I do get to speak to fantastic people. I do some amazing things. So, you know, maybe I did sort of luck out on that side. But, you know, that's hard work and dedication, to be fair. So, I would say that's what brings me joy.
I absolutely love that. And as a mother of a 9-year-old myself, you want to be a good role model for your child. So I imagine that hearing that was just really, really impactful for you.
Yeah.
And I 100% get that. I think having a 9-year-old as well, I don't know about yours, but mine seems to think that she's about 16. So whilst they bring you joy, they can also bring you frustration at times.
Hugely. Yes, absolutely. You know, kind of, I think I have a bit of the same mantra at home as we do at work, really. It's kind of, you know, my thing is always a bit of a slap a smile on it and crack on. So, and I think sometimes with a 9-year-old, you have got to have that because you can't let the little things get in on you. And it kind of does breed into work. You know, you pick your battles, understand the bits that you can actually affect and change, but also kind of hold your hands up when those moments aren't there. But yeah, no, she definitely knows which buttons to push at exactly the right time as well.
Before we get into recruitment and specifically payroll recruitment, we've had a little bit of a glimpse into who Gill is outside of her role in terms of being a mom. But what else should our audience know about you outside of your role at Portfolio, Gill?
Do you know, again, having a child, having a daughter, I love making fancy dress outfits.
That's amazing.
I love World Book Day.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite things in the year. And I think my biggest worry is she's getting older now and she doesn't want mummy to, you know, stitch her stuff together or get a load of cotton pads and turn her into a swan. She actually wants sort of something that's a bit normal, you know. So, I'm kind of quietly a bit creative. I find it, I think I'm creative. I find it quite cathartic to from a relaxation point of view. I really love cooking. Nothing better for me than a Sunday spent in the kitchen with a nice glass of red, cooking a nice dinner and maybe a bit of batch cooking for the week.
Yeah.
I'm not probably the most organised of people, so when I do something like that, I'm really proud of myself. So
That sounds perfect. And, you know, you've mentioned World Book Day. I am going to ask what's been your proudest sort of outfit design that you've done?
I did Lizzie Bennet out of Pride and Prejudice, and I made the hat from cardboard and papier-mâché and things. That was a good one. Swan Lake, did that one. That was a really good one. Again, she was quite young with that. You know what? Probably my least inspiring was doing Fern out of Charlotte's Web, because it was a pair of dungarees and a pair of wellies. So that didn't fill me with massive joy. But yeah, no, Artful Dodger, she went as on one occasion. That was another standout for me. I just love it. It is literally my favourite time of the year.
Yeah, and your passion shines through. I absolutely love it. So you've touched a little bit on the fact that you like cooking, you're quite creative, but what would your perfect weekend look like?
I love walking. I'm not a fan of running. You're not going to get me at a park run on a Saturday morning other than to watch.
Same, to be fair. I'll happily watch everyone else, but I'm not doing it.
On, but, you know. So, yeah, a good countryside yomp, good pub at the end.
Yeah.
Nice roast dinner, family time, you know. But, yeah, being out, having no other distractions and being able to, I think, because, again, during the week, Monday to Friday, it's so busy and you're speaking to so many people. I think the ability on a weekend to switch off, not speak to anybody really, or have to make huge amounts of effort. But like I say, just, open countryside. I was very lucky to have grown up in the countryside, and just go and sort of see the beauty that's out there, on your doorstep even. So, that would be my perfect weekend.
Yeah, I think when you do have such a busy job that involves speaking to a lot of people, you're right, just to get out there in nature is really, really important, and to have that downtime and time that's protected with just your family. So that 100% resonates with me. So your career is in recruitment.
Yeah.
If you hadn't gone down that path, what other job do you think you might be doing today?
Well, I applied for the army and got in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
Oh, okay.
I decided that wasn't for me. I did a politics degree at university, so potentially would have gone down that route. When I was younger, it was zoology. I fell into recruitment like many people of sort of my age or whatnot that are in recruitment. But it was probably always been quite people-centric. And it would have always been fast-paced. I probably could have been in the army, which definitely not for me now.
Or we could have seen you as a politician, Gill.
Well, my husband would say that I give a politician's answer to most things, so maybe.
And it's like you've seen my next question, because recruitment is all about people at its very core. So what is it about dealing with people and different personality traits that you find so interesting, Gill?
Exactly that, in all honesty. Speaking to people from all different walks of life, speaking to people who have lots of different experiences, having some shared experiences with those people. I think, again, having joined recruitment in my early 20s and now not being in my early 20s, there's a confidence that comes with speaking to people and actually sharing parts of you that actually there are probably conversations I have with some clients that I don't actually have with friends, because those clients actually become friends, and become a voice on the, either on the end of the phone or when you go out and meet with them, and you find whether that they're at a similar stage in their life or whether, actually you see something and you think, I can help you with that. I can actually do something, but not just a transactional process, actually wanting, and I think that comes as you do get older in this business, is that everything matters so much more and you realise the value of it, and the fact that you're not shoehorning somebody into a role because you want to make a placement. You're actually placing somebody into something where, I think, because you spend 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day there, 40 hours a week, you know how important it is to get that right person. So I think in terms of, speaking to lots of interesting people. I've had some really interesting people. I've had some not so interesting people. I've had some really interesting scenarios. But I think that's what keeps it fresh, because you're constantly, and actually I'm a bit of a geek at heart. I try and hide it very unsuccessfully. But I started off in industrial recruitment. And when I did that, I went and saw the stripes being put into toothpaste. I saw magnesium rods being made for nuclear reactors, batteries for jump jets. And actually, the scope of things that I've seen, and obviously you mentioned I've come down from Manchester, going out and doing those client visits and meeting people on their sites, I look around now and I look at those buildings and I think, oh, that's a really good view from up there. Like, that building's got a great, whatever it is. And I think that's it. It's that constant, you're not just working with one industry, albeit that we focus on payroll. And like I said, in my career, I've covered quite a lot. But you are actually seeing lots and lots of different businesses and different industries. And with that comes different personalities. And I think bits of it rub off on you. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I love that. And that, you mentioned there, you build a relationship with your clients. It's not just a business agreement, if you will. Yeah. You get to know them, you learn about their families and their lives. Yeah. And I think, that keeps the job really interesting when you find common ground with the people you're working with. So keeping it focused on personality traits. Okay. Which personality traits do you think make the best payroll candidates in your experience?
Customer-centric approach. Having that ability to question, because obviously payroll comes out, you've got to be able to spot an anomaly.
That curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. That desire to develop, so constant, continuous self-improvement, as well as being able to look inside your own processes and see where those improvements, and also be able to take, not criticism isn't the right word, but be able to take that kind of direction that people can give you, especially, the payroll network is phenomenal. And if you link yourselves as a payroll professional with the right people, you can get some incredible advice, where you are having struggles and things. So I think that kind of tenacity, care and empathy, really key. Possibly, customer-centric probably ties in with that, but this is people's pay. This is people paying their bills, buying their food. You get it wrong. So you've got to have a want and a desire to want to get things right, and care about the people that you're paying, I would say.
All of those things that you've just said, Jill, are the things that we notice at the CIPP as well. The payroll network, as you rightly said, is phenomenal. You just need to go on LinkedIn. You see people asking questions and for advice, and they're almost inundated with responses of people wanting to help. So yeah, I do love that payroll network, and you are 100% right. I think to work in payroll, you do have to be empathetic. Yeah. You have to understand that the work you're doing has a direct impact on somebody else's livelihood at the end of the day. So definitely things that we see at the CIPP as well. So you've worked at Portfolio now since 2018?
Yep, that's right.
So 8 years.
Yep.
So quite a long time. Do you think you can now spot the perfect candidate from that first phone call, or from when they first walk into the room and meet you?
Yes-ish. Is there such a thing as a perfect candidate?
Yeah.
It's certainly easier now. You can still get it wrong though. But I would say what you do is it's all about listening. And it is very much about, listening to what that candidate wants, desires, their most important thing that they're looking for when they're looking for a new job. Sort of slightly off track a bit, they say like moving houses and moving jobs, two of the most stressful things you'll do in your life. So we've got to be there and be supportive for that, but we've also got to listen. I think where you do see that perfect candidate, you've got to make sure that you drill down. But it's not just about having the perfect candidate. It's a perfect candidate for a particular business and for a particular job. Yeah. So, it is like there is no one size fits all. But are there clients that I work with now? Are there job titles? Are there job descriptions, job specifications that the minute I start looking at someone, I say, yeah, they're going to be absolutely brilliant for that. Just the other day, actually, my colleague in our London office messaged and said, anybody with this? And I just put the phone down to a guy that I've been speaking to for quite some time. And I was like, I've got an absolutely brilliant candidate for you. He's on interview this afternoon. It's fantastic. So, and that call came through on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So it's you do. But like I say, it's all about marrying up the right culture, business culture, with the right fit of the candidate.
And I bet that is a phenomenal feeling, Gill. Like when that call comes through and you're like, well, I actually know the perfect person and I'm going to put them forward.
Yeah, kind of you suddenly think, oh God, I can do my job. This is it. Like I can do recruitment if I try really hard.
So do you remember the first ever payroll role that you recruited for?
Yep.
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah,
tell me about it, Gill.
Wasn't the smoothest of process, I'll be really honest. There was actually another agency involved at the time. It was a great candidate. I'll be honest with you, when I started doing payroll recruitment and someone said, oh, you've got a bureau and non-bureau, I was like, oh, right, yeah, of course I know what a bureau is. Obviously went home and Googled it that night. Didn't have a clue. And I was going in to manage a team. So, you've kind of got to have your ducks in a row, so to speak. So,
I love your honesty, I've got to admit.
I didn't have a clue. But, carried on nodding my head and, so making all the right noises. So, I do remember it. Had this great candidate. I'd actually been out on site, made the placement within the first 3 weeks of being there. And it was a decent role, really good role as well. But then another agency swooped in to say that they'd sent this CV. Well, I think they rang the candidate actually and kind of tried to strong arm her a little bit.
Oh, wow.
But key bit of information that she'd given me was that the role that they said that they briefed her on, it was a different salary and it was a slightly different job title. And I remember it so clearly because for anybody that knows, I was in the Arndale in Manchester City Centre. I'd finished work. I'm on the phone to this lady walking around just doing laps at this point because I can't actually go and do my shopping because I need to focus on this call. And actually, I'd spent probably a good amount of time getting to know this lady and understanding, like I say, her motivators and, the kind of things that make her tick in a role. And she said, you know what, I 100% want to be represented by you and I will sign whatever disclaimer you want me to sign. And I spoke to the client again. I've been out on site to see the client. I've taken that time and, got to know them and to get under, as much as you can in 3 weeks, under the bones of the business. And the client said, absolutely, if they come to us, we'll tell them where to go, so to speak. So, yeah, I do remember it. It does stand out. Most were a lot smoother after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a good one. And I still speak to that lady now. So,
I love that.
Yeah, no,
and
it's
that
good.
Demonstrates the power of building that relationship.
Yeah.
Not just with the client, but with that candidate as well, because they ended up going with you.
We are in a candidate short market when it comes to payroll recruitment. Mm-hmm. So, yes, of course, you've got to look after your clients. And, we want to build those fantastic, sustainable relationships with them and become partners rather than, like I say, a transactional partnership. But your candidates are the ones that they're the ones that are in really short supply, especially in this market at the moment. And so you've got to nurture those relationships and you've got to spend time with them. And it's about that listening and understanding them and showing them that you actually want to work with them and you don't, it sounds really crass, but you don't just want to make some money out of them.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, it's in the market at the moment, you've really got to look after those candidates as well as your clients, of course.
Yeah. So that initial sort of payroll placement sounds very memorable, but have you got any other memorable sort of candidate moments that stick out in your mind when you look back at your career at Portfolio?
Yeah, I had a lady that I placed and it was actually, it's not sad, but so we got her a great job, worked with her, built a relationship with her, and then about a week or two before she was due to start, actually, she had been having some health issues and she'd been to the doctor and whatnot. Anyway, she came to me and she said, listen, I don't think I can start in this new role. And I said, listen, just calm down. We've not had any kind of diagnosis. You've not even actually been to the doctor yet. You've just sort of had a sort of brief appraisal of it. And she said, no, do you know, I'm going to be poorly and all this. I said, like, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak to you after the weekend. Go away. You're going away with your family. Go and do all that. Have your time and then let's have a chat. And I said to her, listen, I'm not going to go and tell the client right now because let's just see how the land lies. It's Friday. Let's see how you're feeling. She basically just had this call. And it was all so much for her that she instantly, it was the first thing that she could affect was to put that stress to one side. As it transpires, it was actually migraines that she was suffering from, and she was fine. And so the following week, she came back to me. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You know, have I lost this opportunity now?" I was like, "No, you haven't. Don't worry. I've had a conversation with the client. It's absolutely fine. It's not a problem." And she kept the job, and it was a fantastic job. And again, still somebody that we speak to this day. But it's sometimes, again, about understanding those very human reactions and being able to be that kind of bit of a sounding board to say, okay, and also to use our experience because it's something we've seen before. You know, we've seen it where people have potentially knocked back an offer or an opportunity for a reason and then come back to us in a month or two. And we had a situation on a flip side from a client perspective. We had a client who'd been struggling to recruit for quite a senior role for a while. And we had a chap in process and he got offered the job. And he was on a 3-month notice. And we got, I think, 6 weeks into that notice. And he basically came to us and said, the reason I was leaving was because I didn't like someone in the team. That person has now left. So I'm not going to take the offer. I'm going to stay where I am. I felt really sorry for the client because they'd been desperately trying to recruit this role. But also the perception in the market was that they couldn't recruit. And when, especially in, again, a tight network like payroll, when someone can't recruit, there starts to be those questions, why can't you recruit? So said to the client, to the hiring manager, listen, don't go out to advert because I can explain this to people. So when we tell them the name of your company, the likelihood is that they're going to say they're always recruiting. They've been recruiting this role, but we know the backstory. So we can have that really honest conversation that you've been let down and it's not your fault. These people are not starting and then hating it. These people are actually never getting through the front door. So, and actually, again, we turned it round and we got somebody in for them and it took some time. But yeah, there's been a few memorable placements and some great people that you get to work with. And like I say, you get to go out for drinks with them, you get to go out for lunch and things like that. And like I say, the people become people you'll spend your free time with rather than just people that you speak to 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's good.
Oh, that's really lovely. And it's nice that, you can use your expertise and your experience to support both candidates and clients.
Yeah.
And they can come to you in times where, decisions are difficult. It's great that you can be there for them. So I want to turn to payroll as an industry more broadly now. So it's quite a big question, and I appreciate it might not be a straight yes or no. Are you seeing payroll get more recognition within organisations, would you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, it is a straight answer.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
It's a straight answer. And I would say, do you know what? Going back a good few years now, I went to an organisation in Manchester and I remember it clearly because the chap, the head of payroll there said, I need somebody who isn't going to want to sit in a back office and process. I need somebody who's going to go out into the business and talk to people where they've got queries and actually try to mitigate those queries or the errors because they're talking to the business and educating them and actually be really front facing. And I thought, you know what, that's really refreshing. And it was probably the first inkling, I would say. Obviously, and I know I've talked about it before at Payroll Live, but COVID obviously had a huge impact, key worker status and all that kind of stuff. So there was definitely a transition as well coming out of that, whereby payrollers were, invited to the table much more. their impact was much more noticeable within businesses. And I definitely would say, and it probably leads us into sort of the changes in requirements in the market, is that actually, again, comes back to those qualities of a payroller, is that being able to be customer facing, being able to be curious and be it not just to spot an anomaly, but be able to understand it and translate it into layman's terms, is really important. So, yeah, I absolutely do think, and we are seeing, I would say, more at that kind of senior director level, where businesses are, people are getting, like I say, a seat at the senior table because there are cost savings to be made through payroll. The legislation changes so much that, you've got to have a payroll, you've got to invest in that payroll team. And I think businesses are seeing it more and more. And we're talking about big companies. And I think, again, the whole global aspect, there's so much more being asked of payrollers these days. Great for your candidates, great for people going into the industry because the diversity of what you can now do is just incredible. But it's also elevating the whole payroll piece and the whole payroll function from being that back office piece where, someone sat in a corner making sure that people's pay gets done on time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is music to my ears. And I'm sure everybody listening today will love hearing that as well, that organisations are starting to value payroll more and that you're seeing that when you speak to clients. For anybody who is sort of in a payroll role and they aren't having their voice heard, or the business they work for doesn't necessarily understand their value, what advice would you give to them in order to turn it around and to elevate their profile within their business?
I think obviously sort of seek out the key stakeholders. The problem you have with payroll is that it gets done. And you're only going to have someone stamping their feet when it's not done.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you're kind of sort of the victim of your own success. Because asking for that, knocking on that door and saying, I want more exposure or I want to be seen more, well, you're doing your job perfectly well. We've had no complaints. We've not lost any staff because they've not been paid properly. So I think you've got to, again, be assertive and you've got to go knock on those doors and actually, ask the question, can I be involved in, there's a project coming up. They're looking to change systems. Can I be involved in that? Even if it's just to sit and hear what's going on, actually putting yourself at the forefront. And I think you've unfortunately you've got to very much assert yourself. It's going to be down to you to do. You can't but I think that with any industry, if I look at my own team in recruitment, I need those guys to want the next level and to come to me wanting that extra responsibility. So I think it is, and don't get me wrong, there's still a place for people who do just want to go in and sit and do the job and go home when the day finishes. Mm-hmm. There's merit there as well. But if you are striving for that, that seat at the table in your future career, you've got to start asking the questions, get in, get your feet under the table, prove that you do a great job.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Don't be asking for it if you're making errors every month. But at the same time, go in, prove that you can do the job right, that you want to be there, and then start asking the questions.
So I think it comes back to what you spoke about earlier, Gill, with curiosity.
Yeah.
I feel like that word's going to crop up again and again in this conversation, but it's having that curiosity, that thirst and wanting more yourself, I guess. Yeah. Being proactive and putting yourself out there.
Yeah, and taking a bit of responsibility for your own personal development. Mm-hmm. Again, not sort of waiting for someone to pluck you out of a crowd. Pick your businesses wisely. Make sure that their values align. When we're talking to candidates, and particularly things like when sending out interview confirmation or doing interview preparation with people, we talk about not just that business has been around since 1972 and it has X number of employees, but actually what are the business values, and aligning yourself with those. So if you pick the right business for you, it will be a lot easier. You're not sort of running up a stream, so to speak. But it is. It's about that sort of propelling yourself forward as well.
Yeah. And on the topic of propelling yourself forward and personal development, do you think organisations are valuing individuals who embark on qualifications to better themselves, for example?
Yeah, the qualification piece I think is a really interesting piece. I think it's got so much merit on both sides, whether you're a candidate, whether you're a client. I think that, again, certain businesses, and a lot of businesses now, we've probably seen a bit of an upturn on the qualification side, and certainly from candidates wanting that investment and wanting that career development. And yes, businesses, because I suppose the other side of the coin is it's a great way for businesses to tie people in and get that great retention. But in terms of, and we're seeing probably in equal droves, clients saying, our preference would be for someone who's CIPP qualified or who is open to doing it, if we were to fund it, so to speak. So, I would definitely, I think qualifications, probably the last couple of years, I've seen it go up again. It kind of probably plateaued a few years ago, and it was maybe something more your tenured payroll professionals had, whereas what we're seeing now is more of your people coming into the industry who are striving for it, who want those, those letters, those badges, and who want that kind of credibility to add to what they're already doing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it sort of aligns with what we push as, payroll is a viable career for life.
Oh, yeah.
I think historically there was this notion that, you couldn't get qualified in payroll, but we obviously know that that's not true. It's really refreshing to hear that sort of new entrants to the market in payroll are interested in doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I want to look at the jobs market more broadly now. So you touched upon this slightly earlier, but in a few words, how would you summarise the current payroll job market and what it looks like for both clients and candidates?
I'd certainly say, certainly for the North, it's really buoyant.
Yeah.
There is... Yeah, it's exciting, actually. It's the range of roles that are coming out, the systems, the implementation, the companies asking for people with automation, probably more systems management type people as well. We're seeing probably less of your, payroll admin. I'd really say some of your more traditional bureaus. We still, our bread and butter is still those, payroll admins, but it's the variation on the jobs now. That is really exciting and gives you something completely different to look at every day. I don't know if that was a few words, but...
So do you think that, obviously we know since COVID, which you mentioned earlier, working practices across the board have changed. Yeah. Do you think that sort of the increase in organisations that offer remote working and hybrid working, do you think that's had a massive impact on specifically the payroll jobs market that you've seen?
Yes. I would say we've seen a bit of a steady return to office, if I'm honest. The number of fully remote roles that we get through now are becoming less and less. Not to say that they're not there. We are seeing it does allow flexibility. It does open up the skills market for businesses, and there is definitely a piece out there that says, we're payroll, we can do it, sat at home, in our home offices. And there are definitely, payrollers out there that is what they want. But again, I think because of the collaboration and a lot of the change that is happening within payroll, companies are wanting their businesses to be together. And actually, one of the things that we did see coming out of COVID was a lack of retention. So where candidates were interviewing remotely and then working predominantly remotely, there was no cultural alignment. There was no, I go to work every day and I really like my team. I really like going into the office. Not always, but but I really like, and I think there was a bit of a lack of that. So for payroll teams, so a lot of places are bringing them back in so that they've got that collaboration, especially where they're going down this sort of technological technology route and changes and implementations, like I said. But I would say we're looking now more like the 3-2, so 3 in the office, 2 at home. But you've got some big brands that have all gone back into the office full time, which it ups the competitiveness in the market. Obviously, you see increased movement with people because they say, I don't want to go back in, or, they moved further away from their office during, home working. So again, that flips the market a little bit because, throwing a pebble into the water creates ripples, and that's kind of then what those sort of things do. But yeah, I would definitely say that there has been changes, and we have definitely seen businesses going more back to the office than the fully remote piece.
I think with all the changes, I know certainly myself, when I worked in operational payroll, if there was a big sort of legislative or policy change, I'd want to bounce that off somebody else and just run past them and see if they agreed with me. So it doesn't surprise me that some organisations want the payroll team back in the office. I wanted to discuss with you as well, because Portfolio has offices across the UK, but you also have an office in Toronto in Canada, which, by the way, I will happily go there if you ever need me to. So I wondered if you see sort of a big difference between the UK payroll jobs market and the global payroll jobs market.
Between the UK and the Canada piece, there is quite a big difference. I think when we first opened up in Canada, the jobs culture is very different. Temp market was very alien to them. So contractor market, people would sort of work in places man and boy, and if your dad worked there, then it kind of was probably very different to the UK. We're now far more embedded, and obviously we actually do quite a lot of work with the MPI out there, and I would say that we're starting to see that kind of slight shift on that. There obviously things like salaries and whatnot and working patterns, because it's so diverse and huge, are quite different. But I think it's a really buoyant market, and we've had a lot of buy-in over there for things like the salary survey, because there isn't really any other places doing it as much. So I think whereas in the UK, I think the agency market is huge. And there are a lot of agencies out there across all disciplines. In Canada, it is slightly more niche. So it's quite a different market, but they're doing great over there. Yeah. It's really good. Joe and the team are doing a fantastic job. So it's just that when they go to the conference, it's like in Whistler. It's like a 5-hour flight or something like that they've got to go on, and we're moaning it's a 2.5-hour train journey.
So I want to come back to employers now. So this is a bit of a difficult question, because I know that organisations look for all three in pay professionals, and arguably payroll professionals need all three of these skills. But do you think employers are prioritising that sort of pure technical payroll knowledge? Or is it more that they focus on somebody who can navigate their way around different payroll software? Or is it that they're looking for those individuals with amazing soft skills? Appreciate, again, it's probably a bit of a mix of all three.
I mean, it is a mix of all three, 100%. But I think, arguably, skills can be trained. Attitude can't. So the soft skills are really right up there. But also it does depend on where the business is in itself.
Yeah.
Again, we have some clients that we work with who are looking for some very, very specific skills. And actually, sometimes when you look at how long you've been recruiting with them, you think arguably you probably could have brought somebody in and trained that part of the skill, potentially. Not always. But in terms of, I think, it's the same really with any industry. You've got to have the right person fit for them to want to develop and for them want to learn and be proactive in delivering that accurate and timely payroll. On the flip side, though, if you've got something very specific that you need them to do, if you're looking for an implementation or you need someone who's going to sort your systems out or whatever, or even actually come in and run a manual end-to-end payroll, you need someone with the skills. And again, it depends on what the circumstances of the role are. If you've had someone who's gone off sick and it's your standalone one and only payroller, then do you know what? It could be somebody who doesn't want to speak to anybody and who just wants to sit in the corner, but we just need to get that payroll out. So, yeah, tricky one. And there you go. That's my politician's answer. I haven't committed to anything.
But I think it comes back to exactly what you've said at the start, Gill, that it's not one size fits all.
No.
There are many different aspects to payroll roles and, different circumstances crop up. We're human. Like you say, if somebody goes off sick, you need somebody in to quickly do that payroll. All sorts of different scenarios can occur. That no one size fits all approach I think is really important here when we're talking about roles in payroll. So more broadly, do you think businesses are expecting more from their payroll staff?
Caveat is, depends on the business.
Yeah.
But in general, yes, I think they do. I think because even if you just look at that customer piece, even if you just look at that being able to resolve queries empathetically, previously, it would have been processing the payroll and the payroll manager would have dealt with any queries. But I think everybody is now expected to actively contribute and that it shouldn't just all get fed up the chain, that actually you should want to deal with any arising situations and you should want to understand what the root cause of the problem is. And actually we see a lot of roles or a lot of businesses now where the senior payrollers or the managers are working really closely with the likes of the marketing team because they need to get a comms piece out because the line managers are doing it wrong every week and that's what's creating errors or a legislation change. And actually, I think that being at every level. So if you're in there as a manager, you're also expected to really, drive the data into the finance team, drive the data into the HR team, like say, liaise with the likes of the marketing team to ensure comms is out there, all with the sole purpose, let's be honest, of producing an accurate payroll and making sure that your staff are looked after. Your most important asset is your staff in your business. So the most important thing is to get them paid right. I do think that more is being asked of people.
And I think that's a really important point you've raised there. Payroll can't operate in silo. It needs to liaise with, I think you touched upon there, finance, HR, even the marketing team. They need to work collaboratively because the organisation should have the aim together of getting people paid accurately and on time, because as we've touched upon, you go to work to get paid. If you can't trust the organisation to do that, you're pretty quickly probably going to walk.
Yeah, and you lose skills, you lose momentum, your culture takes a nosedive. Again, it's that old adage, isn't it? Nobody rings up payroll to thank them for paying them right every month. But you're certainly going to hear very quickly when you haven't done.
So I want to bring it back again to candidates now. And again, some of these questions, I know it's not a straight answer, but currently, what do you see candidates looking for more? So are they more interested in their salary, in flexibility, in progression, or in that work culture that you mentioned earlier?
I think benefits and reward plays a big part at the moment. Salaries have levelled out again. So we obviously had a huge spike and that seems to have levelled out. But benefits and package and the flexible benefits and things like, flexible working, whether that is some working from home, flexible start and finish times, holidays, really important to people, number of holidays. You can talk to somebody about a job that is potentially a couple of grand, few grand below what they're looking for. But if it's got some really good holidays, then, the benefit is there anyway, especially if you're not having to pay for childcare during holiday, and one thing or another. So, we see that as a really big thing. Progression, I would say investment into qualifications and that knowledge that there is a clear progression to go through with the business. Yeah, I think, again, like you say, it's pretty much a mixture of all of them. But I would say salary, whilst important, is probably the thing that we've got the negotiation on a little bit more if the other things are going to align.
Yeah. And, you know, I think at the moment people do really focus on that work-life balance.
100%.
And it's like what we said earlier, we go to work, but you also 100% need that downtime. And I was only saying to Adrian this morning how I live for my holidays and really look forward to them.
Yeah.
So I can completely appreciate why people would maybe turn down a higher salary in return for that enhanced sort of holiday package.
Well, yeah, and it depends on where you are as well in the pay scales, because actually sometimes if you take that increase in salary, by the time the tax burdens come out of it, actually, and you know, you've potentially lost any benefits that you could. So there is bigger things to kind of negotiate with. And again, if you're not in the office full time, then you're potentially saving money on car parking or transport. Again, with the holidays, like I've already mentioned, you know, holiday clubs for children aren't cheap.
Yeah,
we all know that. And so, you know, if you're saving yourself, you know, a few quid on getting them to there or being able to pick them up slightly earlier after school clubs, then, you know, there's those kind of benefits in it as well. So I think, yes, salaries will always play a part, but at the same time, the benefits piece, I would say, is a big negotiating tool for us.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, employers at the moment who are looking to save money where they can, that's a great piece of advice, Gill. Look at your wider benefits package. You don't necessarily need to hike up salaries. There are other ways that you can offer sort of value to potential employees. So we've talked about what candidates are looking for. Are there any sort of general frustrations that you're seeing from candidates when they come to you?
So it's probably more so talking about the recruitment process, lack of speed.
Okay.
And that's, again, not saying for all clients. I've got some very wonderful clients that move, you know, fantastically. But where candidates do probably get frustrated would be where a process is taking too long, or, you know, you can't get interviews aligned, or CV feedback actually is probably the bigger one. That's once you've got that, actually getting the rest of the process done is reasonably quick. But no, I mean, I think the candidates in the market at the moment, the ones that we're speaking to, it's a good market and they're in a good place. You know, companies, like I say, going right back to the beginning, I would say that it has been elevated, the payroll, the whole payroll function and the payroll profession has been elevated. So I think actually it's in quite a good place. And I think they've got, you know, there's lots of networks. They're getting a good voice, or certainly much better than it has been in the past. And I think they can see that it's very much on the up. Challenges that we have are general niggles that any business will have in terms of, you know, why people are looking for a new job in the first place. A lot of the time, the candidates that we're working with are quite passive. They're not necessarily actively seeking out a new role unless there's redundancy or a change in circumstances. It's generally our network and our relationships that we're talking to that we then kind of put a great offer in, you know, great opportunity in front of them, and they think, well, actually, and maybe a chat about it would be worthwhile. But no, I'd say that the overall feeling, I would say, is that payroll is on the up.
And again, coming back to that power of relationship building, you can go to these candidates that you have on your books and say, I've got a great role for you. And because you've got that relationship, they'll potentially go and have a look at that role with you. You mentioned CVs there, Gill. And I'm really interested, do CVs still count anymore?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say so. A good CV will definitely help enhance your prospects or your chance of getting that interview. Personally, and for my team, again, I think coming from being a temps recruiter, to be honest, where we never bothered with a CV, it was about seeing that person and saying you'd be a great fit. So we very much will spend a decent amount of time with our candidates, understanding them. Again, comes back to that listening piece. And even though we send the CVs, we'll send a synopsis of the candidate, which is more of the three-dimensional side of it. So actually, what are their motivators? What are they? What's not in their CV? Mm-hmm. Ideally, actually, what we want to be doing is picking up the phone to the client and talking to them and explaining the CV before we've almost sent it. A CV can get knocked back. You can get knocked back from a role if your CV isn't up to date, is got big gaps on it that are unexplained. So again, I wouldn't expect that to be happening from any of my team because I would expect those gaps to be explored. Mm-hmm. But if you are applying directly to a business and you're finding you're not getting anywhere, it's likely because the initial CV sift, you may have jobs where you've been made redundant for the last couple of ones, or it's been a contract role even. The client will just see that as you've been jumping around. Yeah. And there's no explanation for it. So if you are getting that kind of, or you're not being successful, I would generally take a good look at your CV and have a look at those parts that almost you're not seeing. Get someone else to have a look at it even, and get them to draw out, like I say, if there's any big gaps or job titles. If you're going for a payroll manager role, but your job title is finance manager, mm-hmm. we've got to draw that payroll piece out. And I'm not telling people to lie on their CVs, but what I'm saying is you've got to draw that bit out. So yeah, I do. I mean, CVs for me are just two-dimensional. You just need to get on the phone. And if you find that great person that is going to be a fit for that client, you want to be picking up the phone straight away to the client and saying, I've got you somebody here that you need to see. Mm-hmm. And that is actually how it does. It feeds into you. You get excited, and you want to get that. A, you want to get the interview for that candidate, but B, you feel great because you've got that client something that that they're looking for.
Yeah, and that's a great bit of advice there, Gill, for anyone listening who might be on the job hunt and who isn't being successful. Have a look at your CV and address those gaps and maybe explain why you've left organisations to prevent it looking like you've jumped around almost. So again, we touched upon this a bit earlier. I feel like we come in full circle quite a lot. No, it's good. So I wanted to talk to you about how payroll job titles are evolving. And your colleague Gemma Creamer did a great article on that in the June-July issue of Professional. Bit of a shameless plug for the magazine there. So how are you seeing roles evolve? I mean, you touched upon it a little bit earlier, but I want to dive a bit deeper into that, if that's okay with you, Gill.
Yeah, of course it is.
And just how you're seeing those roles shift, really.
I think the big shift is that the whole payroll piece has really kind of moved from that transactional payroll piece. It's more strategic. Mm-hmm. And with that, payroll job titles are evolving with it. The payroll administrator now is probably the one where there are still payroll administrators, and again, depends on the companies, but they're the ones that are probably evolving a lot as well, because and again, it comes back to what you were saying before, is more being asked, mm-hmm. and more is being asked. So a payroll administrator of old and what a payroll administrator is doing now can be quite different in that they will be, a lot of the kind of the manual side of things will already be being taken care of by the system. So actually, you're doing quite a lot of data checking and data clarification. You're also dealing with people, with queries. So does that then slip into the advisor role? It is something that companies do need to be quite thoughtful of. I wouldn't say careful, but thoughtful mm-hmm. of, in terms of giving people that right title. Payroll specialist is so broad, and I think Gemma touched on this in the article, is so broad because it's can be someone who is a payroll specialist, whether that's a mayor or global payrolls. It could be someone who's actually more of a technical systems specialist. It could be somebody who's doing sales support on payroll. Mm-hmm. And I think it's such a broad scope. We've always seen the payroll manager one being, is it a manager of people or is it someone who manages the payroll? But again, even that payroll manager role now, I would say there's another level you're seeing a lot more where another level is coming in. So a head of payroll and then a payroll director. And what that does with the titles evolving is it gives everybody more of a career path as well. So you can come in as a administrator, but in all honesty, we probably see more specialists or officer. Actually is probably a title that we see quite often, because officer kind of encompasses a bit of both. You know, you're going to be doing the advisory, but you're also going to be, if the system goes down, you're going to be manually processing. So there is definitely been a change with those job titles, and that will continue to happen because, again, there are all these branches. It's no longer linear. The payroll pathway. It's so now kind of, am I going to go down systems? Do I want to become an AI specialist? Am I going to go and do automation and transformation? Do I just want to stay processing payroll? Do I want to manage a team, develop a team? And it's so vast now that, again, it's really exciting. And you're watching, luckily, having worked with Portfolio Payroll for 8 years, I've seen people at that sort of very start of their careers who are now doing, amazing things. And you're kind of like, oh my God, like 5 years ago, I placed you so-and-so as such and such on that salary. And now, they're absolutely flying. But I think, there's definitely payroll titles are evolving because the whole payroll piece has evolved, and the actual investment in that is changing as well. And I think it's a really dynamic industry. Who would have, again, I've only been doing this 8 years, but if we went back 10, 20 years ago, would anybody have described payroll as a dynamic industry?
Probably not.
And that comes from talking to people. But now, it is. You hear about the things that people are doing, and they're really exciting, meaty roles. So, yeah.
You took the words right out of my mouth there, Gill, with it is exciting.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many different avenues that people can go down. And like you say, not just the traditional linear path that you might first think of. There are lots of different sort of paths that you can go down. And it's great that you're seeing that from the recruitment side as well. So we've had a look at sort of what is going on right now. I want to focus a bit on the future.
Right.
I'm not going to talk about AI, don't worry. But what skills do you think pay professionals should start acquiring now to get ahead of the curve?
I think going full circle and talking about that, getting involved in those projects. Payroll will become more automated, taking AI out of it, but most companies that we're speaking to want some level of exposure to automation. And we get frequently asked, certainly at the senior end, so looking at people who are coming into the industry or maybe been in for a few years but not quite at the management level, where we're recruiting this more senior roles, they definitely are asking for automation. So I think getting the people who probably have got maybe a couple of years under their belt to go and ask those questions of, can I get involved? Can we look at, if it's not a project that's going on now, is there process improvement that could be made? Could you speak to your manager and say, actually, there's a different way we could potentially do this? It might be that there isn't, and the manager already knows that that's not possible, but actually putting yourself forward. So I think as a skill, actually having that confidence in your own self and that want and that desire to take that next step and develop your career within payroll. So I think that's the key skill. It's wanting to be better.
Yeah, I think it's that curiosity.
Curiosity,
again,
yes.
So you heard it here, pay professionals. You need to be curious. But it's fascinating that now currently will put people in good stead, but also in the future looking forward as well. And from speaking to you, I can see how passionate you are about representing pay professionals. And we've already said now is a really exciting time for the industry, but also looking ahead, what changes excite you most about where payroll's heading?
I think that senior market is really exciting. And especially being in the north, not to create any north-south divide, but we have definitely seen more of those types of roles coming up north, which for me is really exciting. So my specialism in recruitment, if you like, is in the exec space. So at the sort of manager and above. And I think it's really exciting to see that happening up here, because if you're going to bring in those seniors into the north, then that's going to, again, have that sort of tree branch effect where they're going to build teams and they're going to develop teams up there. So I think for me personally, that's what I'm most excited about. I think the way that the whole industry is evolving in terms of that seat at the table is really exciting. I think the development of the networks is, again, for us, the greater involvement with CIPP and obviously the partnership is really exciting. But also with that, I think I've noticed that that's grown, and that exposure's grown. And it doesn't seem like it's going to stop. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most exciting part. 8 years ago, I came to Portfolio Payroll from another agency. And I'd been doing PAs type recruitment. And I thought, can you actually have a business that just does payroll? Like, that's how small, like, my concept of it was. I was like, seems like a, bit out there. Transactional finance maybe, but just payroll. And obviously, here I am 8 years later, and absolutely. And the idea now that you would have a transactional finance recruitment team doing payrollers is, it's ridiculous. But it's such an exciting industry. And I think if you look at if you look at recruitment's great. Yes, we've got automation, we've got AI coming in, all that kind of stuff. But recruitment's recruitment. It's about doing the basics really, really well. It's about building relationships. Payroll's got all this tech, all these systems, all these things that can be made better. It just is a really exciting industry. So I'm really excited.
Good. So thank you so much for that, Gill. I do have one last favour of you to ask today, if that's okay. Could I have your question to put to a future guest on Behind the Button, please?
Yeah, what would you tell your younger self now?
That's a really good question. We like the reflective ones.
Yeah. What advice would you give them if you were young again?
Thank you. And thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, Gill.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's been a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
And if you haven't already, hit subscribe or follow Behind the Button on your favourite podcast player. And if you're watching us on YouTube, tap the like button, drop us a comment, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you've got any questions for us, suggestions for future guests, or want to tell us your own payroll story, we'd love to hear from you. Just email behindthebutton@cipp.org.uk. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.